Who would have thought a movie called The Butler was better than a movie called Kick-Ass? Hey guys, Matt here. This is my review of The Butler. This movie is directed by Lee Daniels, who previously directed Precious and The Paperboy. The movie stars Forrest Whitaker, Oprah Winfrey, and David Oyelowo. This movie also has a lot of big names in it, but I'll get to them a little later. Now, the plot of this movie is Forrest Whitaker plays Cecil Gaines, a man who was a butler for 8 presidents. And so the movie focuses on his time not only at the White House, but also him dealing with his family and the society around it. Let me start with the acting in this movie. Forrest Whitaker, he did a great job. It's like him, Denzel Washington, and Idris Elba are like the 3 best black actors, because Forrest Whitaker is probably going to get an Oscar nomination, as he should. And then you have Oprah Winfrey, who going into the movie I thought was going to play just Oprah Winfrey, or she wasn't going to be in the movie as much. But she was throughout the whole thing, and not only that, she's embodied the role of Cecil Gaines' alcoholic wife. She did a really good job. I could also see an Oscar nomination going for her as well. But I also like David Oyelowo. I liked his performance in this much more than I did in Red Tails, because that movie was a bit disappointing. And most of the supporting cast worked as well. I like the man that played Charlie, the youngest son of the family. He was really funny. Some of the best scenes were with him. And then you have actors and actresses that Lee Daniels was using again, such as Lenny Kravitz, Cuba Gooding Jr., Mariah Carey. Some of the side characters like that were needed for variety, others weren't needed at all, like Mariah Carey, who has a non-speaking role in the movie. And then you have the actors that played the presidents. These were some of the best jobs. I really liked Robin Williams as Eisenhower. James Marsden as Kennedy was really good. Liev Schreiber as Lyndon Johnson was great. John Cusack as Richard Nixon was a bit of a caricature, but I mean, it was still nice to see him. And then you have Alan Rickman as Ronald Reagan. He had the look down, but the voice was clearly Alan Rickman. It sounded a bit like Ronald Reagan, but I mean, it was just nice to see Alan Rickman take on a role like that. As far as the biopic goes, I liked how this movie started out with the main character as a young boy, showed him become a teenager, showed him learn his craft as being a butler, and then showed him starting a family, having kids, and growing older throughout the movie. This reminded me a lot of the movie The Temptations. It's one of my favorite movies, where it really shows you progression from childhood to an elderly adult. And like any historical movie, I liked how this movie made you feel like you were actually there in that world, whether it was the costume design or the set design or even news on the TV, things that made you feel like you were in the 60s, 70s, or 80s. Now, one thing Lee Daniels had in this movie that I felt they kind of focused a little too much on were the civil rights. Now, I know that that was an important part of our history, and I know that that was kind of the rift between the father and son characters in the movie, but there's a scene in a diner that was pretty intense. And there was also a scene with a fire hose that I understand Lee Daniels wanted to put that in the movie, but to focus so heavily on that was a little uncomfortable. And there was also a scene at the end that felt a little bit like propaganda. Now, I know it's about this person and his journey and the end of the journey, but it just felt a little much. But overall, this movie had a lot going for it. It had unexpected humor. It had historical aspects in there, but it also had emotion and powerful scenes. For instance, the scene at the dinner table that I think is in the trailer, but to fully grasp it, you have to see the movie. And the scene overall is just well acted and great. So, because of that, because this movie was good and enjoyable, a little slow at times, but you can really get past that, I'm going to give The Butler a B+. I wouldn't say this movie is on par with The Help, but it's pretty close. So, whether you're a fan of Forrest Whitaker or just history in general, check this movie out. It's a bit uplifting. So until next time, guys, see ya.